Good afternoon. This Board Governance and Personnel Committee meeting is now being recorded for record-keeping purposes. By participating in this session, you are consenting to the recording, retention, and future viewing of this meeting. This meeting is now being live-streamed. Thank you.
Thank you. This is the Board Governance and Personnel Committee meeting of February 23rd, 2021. We are starting at 3:04 p.m., a little late from our 2:30 p.m. original start date. So I will call this meeting to order. I want to welcome two new members to the committee, which is Treasurer Garrity and their designees, and Secretary Vague and his designees. So the committee will now be comprised of Treasurer Garrity, Senator Hughes and his designees, Gregory Thal, Secretary Vague, as I said, and myself. With that, Chris or Terry, roll call, please.
I can do that. Chairman Philman.
Present.
Treasurer Garrity.
Present and happy to be here.
Great, thank you. Ms. Marchowski on behalf of Senator Hughes.
Present.
Thank you. Mr. Thal.
Present.
And Alan Flanagan on behalf of Secretary Vague.
Present and happy to be here as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next piece of business is the election of a committee chair. And Terry Sanchez, please.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I will take nominations for the office of committee chair for the Board Governance and Personnel Committee. Nominations, please, for committee chair.
On behalf of Senator Hughes, I'd like to nominate Chairman Philman.
Thank you. We have Chairman Philman on the nomination list. Are there any other nominations? Any others? Hearing none. All those in favor of Mr. Philman for chair of the Board Governance and Personnel Committee, please say aye.
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 Opposed, no. Very good. Unanimous decision, and welcome to the chair position. And again, Chair Philman, and I'm very glad to see it, as this is the only, by bylaw, the only committee which you are allowed to be chair of, so we're glad to see it.
Yes, thank you all. I'll continue with the same salary, which is zero, for my new position, so thank you. I enjoy doing the position. With that, let us continue with the agenda. At this point, I need a approval of the minutes of December 1st of 2020 of the Board Governance and Personnel Committee meeting. Could I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
I hear a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second.
I hear a second. Any questions on the motion? Hearing none. All in favor, aye? Aye.
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 Any opposed? No, the motion is carried. Item number 5 is old business, fiduciary review and board self-assessment update. Mr. Houston.
Yes, thank you. So I just wanted to give an update on where we are with the fiduciary review and board self-assessment. As you recall, the purpose of this engagement, we've engaged Funston Advisory Services, which is a team of experts that was actually engaged by SIRS 4 years ago. I guess it's almost 5 years ago now, to do the governance overview. And so their primary purpose is to conduct a fiduciary and governance review of the board's performance of its duties in 4 task areas, which I'm going to go over briefly, and to assist the board in its review and assessment of its performance and identify subject areas that may be appropriate for educational training and training sessions. So that's the self-assessment process. The Funston team is made up of Rick Funston, who's a project leader and leader of the self-assessment. We have Randy Miller, who's the project manager, Flick Fornia, who's a consultant who's going to be leading the evaluation of the asset liability matching process. And then we have John Lukaminik, who's the leader of the investment manager selection, due diligence, and monitoring and termination of managers evaluation, and also the consideration of targeted investment requirements. He'll be working in that area. And then finally, Lisa Morris, who's the consultant and leader of the evaluation for the legislative positioning. We formed a steering committee which is comprised of Dave Philman, Greg Jordan, Lloyd Ebright, Terry, Seth Kelly, Jim Nolan, Tom Durr, Don Bell, and myself. We met with the Funston team to review the project plan and to provide guidance and agree on that, and to take a look at the draft self-assessment questionnaire. The scope and the process and the deliverables are, so they are going to be conducting a review of the board's performance of its duties, identify best practices in 4 areas, which is evaluate and make recommendations regarding the consideration of non-economic investment requirements, to evaluate and make recommendations as to the asset liability matching process, to evaluate and make recommendations as to legislative positioning, whether we should be reactive or proactive as examples, and then finally to evaluate and make recommendations as to the investment manager selection, due diligence, and monitoring and termination of managers. The deliverables are, we're already well underway. They had a pretty big document request, which we've complied with. Next step is they're giving us a list of staff, consultants to interview after having looked at the materials. They are going to want to interview a couple of the board members based on the board members' involvement in particular areas that are subject to the fiduciary review. The plan then is to have a draft report with preliminary recommendations for review whenever we have our retreat, which will either be March 25 or March 26. So we'll have not a sunshine meeting, but we will have a meeting of the committee to review those recommendations and provide input. And then they'll be having a final report, which would be the end of April, and that'll include an executive summary suitable for any stakeholder communications, which will include a summary of recommendations organized by task area and recommended updates, if you will, to existing policies or perhaps new policies as appropriate, with a detailed analysis of each of the areas. And then finally, to have sort of a high-level implementation roadmap, for implementation. Regarding the self-assessment, it's to identify what policies, procedures, and practices are working well, and where there are opportunities for improvement, including how onboarding and continuing education could be improved. Funston will discuss with the steering group how the peer-to-peer feedback will be communicated with the board. So the deliverables here are, it's a multi-step process. So the steering group met and reviewed and agreed upon the self-evaluation questionnaire, which has been submitted, and we must say that the response was very, very good to the surveys that were issued. Funston will then prepare a discussion document with a summary of the responses, including any potential recommendations, and review with board members through individual interviews. And then prepare a draft report with summary of findings and potential recommendations for presentation to the Board Governance and Personnel Committee, again, when we have a date fixed on either March 25 or 26. And then to get feedback from the committee members and incorporate those into the report, with a final report being issued then in the end of April, basically in conjunction with the fiduciary review. So that's a high-level overview, if you will, of the project scope. Any questions about any of that?
Okay. Thank you, Chris.
That's all I have on that then, Dave.
Very good. Okay, going on. Special presentations, there are none. We go into new business. The first point is the appointment of assistant chair. And as the chair, I have that ability to do it. So I appoint Senator Hughes to serve as assistant chair of the Board Governance and Personnel Committee. As many as are in favor of consenting to the appointment of Senator Hughes or his designees, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the appointment of Senator Hughes is confirmed. And Tony, please relay that to the senator. With that, we have under B, review of 2021 Board Governance and Personnel Committee Work Plan, Chris Houston and Katie Matthews.
Right, so included in the board docs under 7B, you'll find a copy of the the work plan. You've seen this before, but for the new members on the committee, it identifies, in high-level terms, if you will, the work plan for the committee through the year with items identified for each of the months. We do anticipate having the committee meet throughout the year through February, April, June, July, September, December. For the items in February, we're dealing with those during this meeting, so I'm not going to go into great detail on those items. But I don't know if there's any particular questions, or Katie, if you had anything else you wanted to add?
No, nothing in particular. I think I'll echo Chris's comments. This is an annual process for us, and we haven't really made any significant changes to the work plan. Thank you.
Any questions for Chris or Katie? Seeing none, we'll continue on. Letter C, the review of Board Governance and Personnel Committee Charter. Chris Houston.
Thank you. Those of you who have been on other committees, this is a familiar topic for you. It's time for our biennial review of the committee's charter. The charter provides that the committee is supposed to make recommendations to the board to approve any proposed revisions to the charter. And this committee also has another function, and that is to review any proposed changes coming from the other committees to their committee charter. So there's two functions, two roles that this committee has. What we'd like to do is take care of one of those roles today, and that's to take a look at the proposed revisions to the charter and take action accordingly. But those proposed revisions won't be presented to the board until April. After which at the April meeting, we anticipate having this committee take a look at the other proposed revisions from the other committees and their charters, and then send a complete package, if you will, up to the board for its consideration in April. So included in board docs, you'll find a redlined copy of the proposed revisions, and they really are relatively minor. It's really just to deal with the reorganization, primarily to deal with the reorganization that was taking place here at the agency relative to, for example, renaming the legal office to the chief counsel's office. One thing I did want to highlight, and that is on page 3 of the red line, it's the oversight of personnel. The charter had originally provided that the committee shall collaborate with staff and the legal office to review all personnel policies. In reality, the personnel policies are really at the Office of Administration, at the governor's level office. So there's really not much of a function. Really, the policies we're really talking about here are the processes, I should say, or the performance review process for the executive director and the chief investment officer, and then to the extent that we have policies in place for investment professionals and attorneys. We are going to be doing a comprehensive salary study coming here shortly on the investment professionals and attorneys. So to the extent that we further change any investment professional policies, and you do also, as we're going to be talking about a little later, you are involved in the salary structure for the investment professionals other than the CIO. So that's the other policy that would be included in there. So we wanted to have language and just clarify what we meant by those personnel policies. Katie, was there anything else you wanted to comment on that in particular?
No, I think you adequately covered it. Thank you. Okay.
So other than that, those are just some minor revisions to the charter. And with that, Chair Philman, I think that we would be, unless anybody has any questions regarding those, we'd be ready for a motion on that.
Any questions for Katie or Chris? Any questions? Seeing none, a motion is in order for the Board Governance and Personnel Committee to recommend to the State Employees Retirement Board that it approve the amendments to the Board Governance and Personnel Committee Charter as set forth in the attached. Do I hear a motion in effect?
So moved. Greg
I hear a
Dahl.
motion. Do I hear a second?
Second, Tony Marchowski.
Thank you. It's been properly moved and seconded. Anyone on the question? Hearing none. All in favor, aye.
Roll call.
I'm sorry. It's a roll call. That's right.
That's okay. I'm sorry.
Chairman Philman,
Yes.
Treasurer Garrity,
Aye.
Ms. Marchowski for Senator Hughes,
Aye.
Mr. Thal,
Aye.
and Mr. Flanagan for Secretary Vague.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody.
And Chair, just again, as I said, this will then go really before the board at the April meeting, so it won't be on for action tomorrow.
So noted. Okay, with that, we have item number D, review of the board education policy, and Chris Housen again.
Right. So in your materials under 7D. There's a memo from me and a red line of the board education policy. So there was legislation enacted last year, Act 2020-128, which included revisions to the mandated educational training requirements for the board members, and it also now includes educational training requirements for board members serving on the Audit, Risk, and Compliance Committee. So it basically increased for board members from 8 to 10, the total number of hours, and added 2 categories of asset allocation and risk assessment. And this doesn't start, though, until 2022. So that's the good news with that as far as the increase in number of hours. Additionally, as I indicated, for Audit, Risk, and Compliance Committee members, there is now a education requirement. That doesn't go into effect until on or after February 24. So all of the members who are on the Audit, Risk, and Compliance Committee, there's no requirement for this year to complete these training requirements. But what it does is it adds 16 hours of training in risk assessments, internal controls, and auditing standards within 90 days of the appointment to the committee. That would be for new appointed members. And then there's an annual ongoing 8 hours of training on those same topics each calendar year thereafter. So the policy has been amended to provide for those new mandated requirements. And as you all know, Don Bell does a good job of managing our board education, and so he will be working closely with the board members and designees to ensure that we have the appropriate amount of education made available to you to satisfy these requirements. So I'll open up for any questions on that.
Chris, you said about the audit committee, it was February 24. You meant February 2024, correct?
It was anybody after February 24th of this year. So everyone who's in there now is grandfathered in, if you will.
Okay.
So yeah, so it's into the future.
Any other questions? Hearing none. Motion is in order to recommend to the State Employees Retirement Board that it approve the amendments to the board education policy as set forth in the attached. Do I hear a motion to that effect?
So moved.
I hear a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
I hear a second. Roll call, please.
Chairman Philman,
Aye.
Treasurer Garrity,
Aye.
Ms. Marchowski for Senator Hughes,
Aye.
Mr. Thal,
Aye.
and Mr. Flanagan for Secretary Vague.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
That passed unanimously. Thank you very much, folks. Item 7E, review of board self-assessment policy. Again, Chris Housen.
Thank you. So the current board self-assessment policy has a requirement in it that the committees is to undertake a review of that policy every 2 years. So here we are on the 2-year review date. It was implemented over 2 years ago, so it's time. But we've taken a look at it, and we're not recommending any changes at this time. Having said that, depending upon what if any additional recommendations may come out of the current Funston review. There may be, there may be revisions that might come from that. So we just we can't predict that. But all we're saying is that staff has looked at it. We're not recommending any changes at this time, but so the committee can say that they've satisfied the requirement to having reviewed the policy in this biennial review. So there's no action. There's no action needed.
Okay. Any questions for Chris? Seeing none. Item 7F, the review of the board bylaws. Chris Houston.
Okay. So on the bylaws, there's two things that we want to talk about today. Again, the bylaws provide that every 2 years we are to undertake, I should say the charter provides that the committee is to undertake every 2 years a review of the bylaws to determine whether there's any changes that should be made. There is one technical correction which we would like to make. That's to section 1.1 of the bylaws, and there's a red line copy of it in your materials at 7F. It really adds 6 words, and this is in the retirement code in any event, so it's just to conform to what's existing in law. And that is that for at least 5 members of the board, currently says they should be active members of the system, but we also need to add or active participants in the plan. So that's a technical correction. We just want to make sure that the bylaws conform with what the law requires. So that's the one thing that we would like for the committee to recommend making a change to the board. The other thing I wanted to talk about, though, and that is under Act 2020-128, there was an amendment to Section 5901, subsection G2 of the Retirement Code, which basically provides that the board may, not required, but may establish an executive committee, which shall consist of the board chair, board vice chair, if one has been appointed, the chair of the Audit, Risk, and Compliance Committee, the chair of the Investment Committee, and the chair of the Finance and Member Services Committee, or other members of the board as determined by the board. That's all it says about it. It doesn't say what the committee is supposed to do, and it certainly doesn't require the board to create such a committee. We're just making you aware of that, so that since we're already looking at the bylaws and providing for a change, because this would require a bylaw amendment. If you wanted to establish an executive committee, if you did want to do that, you would want to think about what the duties and responsibilities of the committee would be. We would want to settle on who would be serving on the committee. So we're laying it out there as if you wanted to further explore this. You can do it at any time. There's no requirement, as I said, to implement this change. But we just thought we'd bring it up now since it is there, and if you wanted to pursue it and ask staff to further explore various options as to how it could be structured, we'd be happy to do that. And if we go that route, then we would recommend just deferring that technical correction that we'd be proposing that you would need, or if you don't want us to do it now and just proceed with the technical correction, we can just do that.
Yes, I think that for one thing, since there's no real direction in the law as far as creating an executive committee, that created a whole committee just to see what the committee's going to be doing. I think we haven't really been. I think the subcommittees are working very well, and I think a lot of the energy of the chairs and the members are into their committees. To put another committee on top, which we don't even know what it's going to be, I would say let us hold off on that. Let us get more dust settled on the subcommittees and get some more understanding as far as where we're going with that, and then maybe we can review that. So that's my recommendation. We just hold off on this and understand we have the ability in the future to go into this if we need be.
I see Mary has looks like Mary has a question, and then Tony, I think, has a question.
Okay. All right. This is Mary Soderberg. I'm not on the committee, but this is an interesting topic, and it's making me reflect back on another board that I'm currently on, where we did establish an executive committee. And that played a very important role because we did not have a very strong committee structure. we used the executive committee to really improve the structure of the rest of the board, and now we have a pretty strong committee structure. So I think Chairman Philman is correct that we have recently implemented our committee structure. It seems to be working very well, and yeah, I don't know if we would need an executive committee. Just my thoughts.
Thank you. Tony.
No, I agree with what you stated, Chairman Philman, and I'll be honest, when we were discussing the legislation in the General Assembly, there was a lot of confusion around this because there was no clear direction given, and it was a head scratcher, to be honest. So at this time, on behalf of Senator Hughes, I don't know that it's necessary to explore. I agree wholeheartedly. I think what we've done with the committees is admirable. I think we're doing great work. And, to quote a wise person, if it's not broke, don't fix it. So those are just our thoughts.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, it seems if we don't have a consensus to establish an executive committee, although we have the ability in the future to do that. Unless anybody disagrees, we will hold that as in abeyance or tabled. But we do have the other amendment that we need to the bylaws, correct, Chris?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. So a motion is in order to recommend to the State Employees Retirement Board to amend Section 1.1 of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania State Employees Retirement System bylaws as set forth in the attached. Do I hear a motion to that effect?
So moved.
I hear a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
I hear a second. Anybody on the question? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Chairman Philman?
Aye.
Treasurer Garrity?
Aye.
Ms. Marchowski for Senator Hughes?
Aye.
Mr. Thal?
Aye.
And Mr. Flanagan for Secretary Vague?
Aye.
Okay, that's everyone. All yes.
Okay, thank you. The motion passes.
So, Chair, just comment on that. So the process is then that we then give notice to the board. We have to give at least 2 weeks advance notice to the board about the revision to the bylaws. So we will do that. So it won't be until the April board meeting that we'll present that amendment to the board.
Okay, thank you very much. We are now scheduled to go into an executive session. So we will have to wait until we turn off the live feed, and we are going to have some staff in for our topic that we have, which is the salaries for the investment professionals.
Yes, and before we go into executive session, let me make the announcement. The topic of the executive session will be the annual salary adjustments for investment professionals, excluding the Chief Investment Officer. This discussion will involve performance reviews and individual salary discussion amounts for individual employees. That is a topic specifically allowed in the Sunshine Act to be the subject of an executive session.
Okay, thank you. We'll wait to get the clearance.
Okay, we are now back in session.
Okay. All right, thank you. We're back in the public session after the executive session. Joe, do you have to make a comment? Okay.
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. All right, so with that, we'll go right into the business. A motion is in order to approve the salary adjustments for investment professionals effective the first full pay period of March 2021 as per the attachment in the board docs. Do I hear a motion to that effect?
So moved.
I hear a motion. Do I hear a second? I'll second that. Any questions on the motion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Chairman Philman?
Aye.
Treasurer Garrity?
I'm going to abstain since I wasn't part of the evaluation process that occurred earlier. However, I would like to say that coming from the private sector, with so many people furloughing, taking pay cuts, and small businesses shut down, I probably have a little bit of a see this through a different lens than many of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Marchowski for Senator Hughes.
Aye.
Mr. Thal.
Aye.
And Mr. Flanagan for Secretary Vague.
Aye.
All right, that's everyone. All yeses except for Treasurer Garrity, who's abstaining. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all. Very good discussion. With that, the motion passes. The only other business that we have, any comments, concerns, or questions? I see none. Thank you very much. Within an hour, we did our business. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. And with that, we need a motion to adjourn. Can I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
No questions. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carried. Thank you very much. Our next meeting is April 27th and 28th. So with that, thank you very much.